When The Return of the King was released in theaters, many people who had never read the books were confused as to what Saruman's fate was. That wasn't until the extended edition was released that we actually see him die, and he gets stabbed in the back by Grima on top of Orthanc, and then he gets impaled by a wheel with spikes. So for many, this is satisfying enough to see how his story comes to a close, but for those who read the book, it was quite disappointing to some because that isn't how it happens. Now, I know this is old news to a lot of you who are watching this.
That's an old one.
But I know some of you also have never read any of the books yet, so I wanted to cover this as well as some of the other videos that I have already made, and some that I will in the future. That being said, what they cut out from the trilogy was an entire chapter, that being the Scouring of the Shire. And in that chapter, the Shire ends up almost in ruin, just as it was shown in the Mirror of Galadriel to Frodo. And honestly, it makes sense that this would happen because I find it hard to believe that the Shire was completely oblivious to the war happening on the rest of the continent. But before we get into exactly what happened in that chapter, let's first discuss the one responsible for it, Lothal Sackville Baggins. Lothal was the son of the Sackville Baggins that you may remember from the Hobbit movies, Lobelia. He was a hobbit that wanted to bag end, just like his parents, but he didn't get to be chief until after Frodo had already lived in his home that Lothal believed should have been rightfully his. And so, after Frodo left, he enacted his master plan. He made deals with Saruman and sold his pipeweed to him to buy several properties in order to eventually gain control, and he called Sharky's men, Saruman's men, to help invade the Shire to further his control. In the process, they imprisoned Mayor Will Whitfoot for almost a whole year, and the Shire became industrialized. His plan, however, didn't work out as well as he had planned, because Saruman was now in control. We'll get into why in just a bit. When the ring was finally destroyed and our four main heroes came home, they didn't come back to a comfortable life like in the movies, for the fight wasn't over yet. Saruman was still lurking there, so Gandalf told them that by using the strength and the skills that they had gained throughout their journey, they would be able to tackle this problem on their own. Merry and Pippin then lead the Battle of Bywater, and it has resulted in their victory with only 19 hobbit deaths and half of Saruman's army diminished. The rest fled. As Saruman was about to finally face death, he spoke to Frodo and told him about the fate of Lothal. So let's just read through how Saruman is really supposed to meet his demise.
"Then I will," said Saruman. "Worm killed your chief. Poor little fellow, your nice little boss. Didn't you, Worm? Stabbed him in his sleep, I believe. Buried him, I hope. Though Worm has been very hungry lately. No, Worm is not really nice. You better leave him to me."
A look of wild hatred came onto Wormtongue's red eyes.
"You told me to. You made me do it,"
he hissed. Saruman laughed.
"You do what Sharky says, always, don't you, Worm? Well, now he says follow."
He kicked Wormtongue in the face as he groveled, and turned and made off. But something snapped. Suddenly, Wormtongue rose up, drawing a hidden knife, and then with a snarl like a dog, he sprang on Saruman's back, jerked with his head back, cut his throat, and with a yell ran off down the lane. Before Frodo could ever recover or speak a word, 3 hobbit bows twanged, and Wormtongue fell dead. To the dismay of those that stood by, about the body of Saruman, a grey mist gathered, and rising slowly to a great height like smoke from a fire. As a pale shrouded figure, it loomed over the hill. For a moment it wavered, looking to the west, but out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sigh, dissolved into nothing. So this chapter, even though it upset many fans and I myself actually enjoyed this chapter, I think it was still completely justified to leave it out of the films. To me, I think it definitely would need more screen time, and it would work a lot better in a TV series, for example. But in this trilogy it wouldn't work because 1. The main threat is over, 2. It wouldn't really add much to the story, and 3. It would have made the runtime far too long. I mean, there was already tons of complaints and critiques towards the dragged out ending, which personally I really loved, and at least we got a little taste of the Scouring of the Shire in the Lord of the Rings Conquest game from 2009. Speaking of which, would you guys like to see me live stream that on Twitch? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and light the beacons on your way out to stay up to date with all my latest videos, and until our next meeting, I bid you farewell.